The people who are the divas who believe are the ones that will drive the culture of excellence, and they'll drive you to that excellence. Steve Jobs was a diva. They drive people hard, they're controversial, and they care passionately. Right? If you find those people, you're probably going to work for one. So be nice to them.
A diva will, if they're not hyper competent enough to where success is correctly lined up with their sense of self-worth, they'll blow shit up that doesn't make sense. They'll nix solutions that actually fix the fucking problem but don't massage their ego. They'll make other people feel shit. And maybe even if you do succeed in getting the shit done, everybody hates the fucking company. People aren't getting paid enough. It's unhappy. And it's like, cool, success at what cost? So it's like,
it's a red flag.
Should you hire divas in the workplace is semi-interesting to me.
Okay, divas. Let me play this real quick, because that's all we gonna have soon. And also, the motherfucker speaking is a fucking dickhead from what I've seen.
Eric Schmidt, former Google CEO.
Yeah, that motherfucker's a dickhead. Just from every clip I've seen of him talking about literally anything to do with the workplace. So whatever he said, I'm finna disagree with it probably.
They are the divas. Right. Now, by the way, if you read any
I thought you saw that first 3 seconds. I was like, okay, I gotta pause because I'm finna go to fucking immediately.
This motherfucker, I don't like his shirt. I don't like his haircut. Them glasses are fucking stupid. Why is he holding the mic so hard?
This nigga just sighed and you were like, pause. I got it. I'm done. I'm done already.
See, no, sorry, but I got the tab muted, so I can't even fucking hear
management text. It says, "Don't hire the divas because they're nothing but a pain in the ass." By the way, they are. But the people who are the divas who believe, right, are the ones that will drive the culture of excellence, and they'll drive you to that excellence. Steve Jobs was a diva. I worked with Bill Joy, who was my colleague for many years. He's an example of a diva. And I mean this in the most flattering way. They expect a lot. They drive people hard. They're controversial, and they care passionately. Right? If you find those people, you're probably going to work for one. So be nice to them. You should hire the divas.
Yeah. So as expected, completely fucking disagree. 101% disagree with the 1% margin of error.
And my biggest issue with it is, I think he's miscategorizing what a diva is.
Okay.
Like I do think that teams benefit from having a person with a high bar who is a visionary, right? So in my work at Strickland Propane, the people there are lots of people in the team dynamic, and like Eddie, you've led like teams, and so let me know if this is off base from your experience as well. Yeah. But there are people who are the executors. There's the person who's like, or people who's the leader, you know, the project manager sort of style. And then there's the person who's like the big idea person. And we all kind of rally around them, and they kind of hold us accountable to their vision. And a lot of times those things can overlap. Like all of those things plus other things can be a Venn diagram, and there could be a person that's at the center. But I see Steve Jobs as more of like the visionary type. When I think of a diva, I think of the person on the team who's not contributing much, who's temperamental, who's self-important, who thinks that like they got this shit and they're like the best thing since sliced bread, and they're not really contributing much. That's what I think of as a diva. So I kind of want none of those on my team. If I had to pick one kind of person that I want on a team, if I can't have any, because ideally what you need is multiple different kind of personalities and skill sets to make a team. That's why PMs are a role, because
I love a technician.
Most companies,
that's what I need on a team, is a technician.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking a person who's process driven, in the weeds, and who can communicate. And if I have like 8 of those people,
I can't connect to the Wi-Fi network.
Then I can't connect if I don't have the people.
That's so fucking good. But no, if I have 8 of those people, I can get a lot of stuff done, even though I don't think it's optimal, versus having a true diva. But I think that my biggest issue is that what he described is just the visionary high bar person, and it completely divorces it from the negative impact of the the lay definition of what a diva would be, in my opinion.
So I think that his caveat when he says you shouldn't hire divas, but if they're passionate and process, he adds a bunch of caveats on it, and so I think that diva is purely about self-importance, self-aggrandizing, and showmanship. Like literally, it's a diva. You're a showgirl. I'm a diva.
Yeah.
Look at me. I'm flowery. Look at my sequins. Look at my headpiece. I'm a diva. And there are places where that's appropriate, like on a fucking cabaret stage. But or
even if you're like a marketer, or even if you're like a marketer, like brand.
No, I don't even like. So what I'm getting at is I think that's a personality type by itself, and then you layer other things on top of that, because you can be a diva and a technician, you can be a diva and a visionary, you can be a diva and a whatever. And so I think what he's describing is a diva who believes in the purpose of whatever it is that is getting done, or has just latched that onto their sense of self-identity. So a lot of times you'll have a team where someone is a diva, but their job is they paint the little dot on the top of an eye. That's all they do. So it's very difficult to kind of get that sense of self-worth when you have a small technician job. So what ends up happening is they throw a wrench in shit because they need to get that like, oh, but I'm special shit. And so it's a lot of self-sabotage and then fixing problems that didn't need to be there. Similar to what's old boy from when we watched The Bear, and I said I hated this. Not even that I hated this dude, because I actually feel for him. I just didn't like the way the story. Richie, yeah, I actually feel for him. I even would say I identify with him, but I feel like the story didn't hold him accountable the way that it should have. He's a diva, but the problem is this motherfucker's bad at most of his job. Once you rein him in, then some of those diva characteristics start to become now semi-useful, but not really. So I think that squares the circle in terms of what you've observed. Which I don't think is wrong, but I think it's just that diva and visionary are not mutually exclusive. They're like damn near a circle depending on who the person is. So I think that Steve Jobs and all the ways that he's been described as being a hyper manipulative, super controlling, toxic, don't give a fuck about the people that he works with personality is very in line with being a diva. He just happened to also be quite clever as a marketer and as a visionary and as a communicator. So with this situation, the reason that I disagree is I just watched this video about Costco, and they were talking through like the culture of what Costco has been from its inception, and the way it values its workers, and the way that every person in Costco is internally promoted. So everybody who like the person who's like the regional, like the federal manager of all of the shit, he started off as like a bag boy and just was going up ranks over the course of like 20 years. And that's how they do everything. And all of them get paid, like the lowest person gets paid $30 an hour, which I think is a good pay and is fair and probably is closer to what most people should be getting paid for entry-level jobs. Costco does it voluntarily, way above the minimum wage, which obviously makes them competitive. And they also really, really work hard to save their customers money. So their model is not, how do we grow and make as much money as possible to pay our shareholders as much as possible? The goal is, how do we do what the fuck we do and do more of that well, while respecting our clients, respecting our suppliers, taking care of our customers, and taking care of our workers. That's the kind of edict that they follow. And so when I look at a Google, and I remember him talking about his view on AI and chips and the American competition versus Chinese competition. He said the problem with Google is they were worried about work-life balance and making sure their workers were happy and healthy, and they weren't worried about winning. And so that's why China has dominated us. And I thought, this is not a motherfucker that I want to listen to about anything that has to do with any workplace, because it's full goal orientation, and the goal is get rich. And so that's kind of why I don't give a fuck about this diva shit, because everything that he described is you should hire divas because it'll make you rich and it'll make the vision come true and all that kind of shit, maybe at the expense of everyone's happiness on this project. So fuck that is my view.
And I don't disagree. The only caveat that I will add is I think that your assessment of divas is accurate. And I think even how you're categorizing his assessment of divas is accurate. Where I think I still have an issue is I think that it's one of those things where I think Steve Jobs is successful because of all of those other things and also happens to be a diva, but now we think that being a diva is why he was successful and not all
I
of those
agree,
other things.
100%. I think that's a
So-
great addition.
So he's saying like you need a diva and thinking that for some reason, you know, just that
The diva is the
baseline
cause, but it's
correlation
like,
that
yeah.
he was successful despite being a diva, not because he was
Yeah.
a diva.
I do think that there's a little bit of I'm not sure, because I think that there's an effect where it's like you
Yeah.
could be a Steve Jobs without the diva element, but I don't know how likely it is, because I think the drive to stay up and do shit like that and go, oh, we got to make the next phone, and we got to make phones something that people they can never comprehend what it was. We got to change the whole environment. The motivation needed to do that kind of requires a hole in your sense of self, which may or may not be unhealthy, but it requires to have like a call towards something that requires something like it might not necessarily be a self-importance thing. It could be a call towards, I want to change the world or whatever, but you want to do something special. And I feel like it's very hard to find a person who would do all the shit that Steve Jobs did without that little kernel of like, oh, I was abandoned as a baby and they left me in a trash can, you know, so I need to become, you know, I need to learn calligraphy and take over, you know, the fucking, the fonts inside computers. That's what I'm going to do. Like, I'm not sure if that would actually happen, but I agree that I don't think you have to be a diva, but divas tend to, you know what, like how they say crazy people, or, you know, the overconfident or whatever. It's like a survivorship thing where it's like, yeah, most crazy people, most divas trash, but all the people that make it to the finish line, crazy divas.
Yeah. And it's also, I think there are certain elements of that. Like, for example, you mentioned like the showmanship, because they're self-important and they need the lights on them. I think there's a certain level of that is important when you're the founder and you're trying to launch and you're trying to drive like startup culture, as opposed to being the anointed leader of an established brand. Because there are a lot of examples of people who are not that took over like established brands and took them to a whole nother. Yeah, exactly. So the primary example that I always think about is like Dr. Lisa Su from AMD, who like took that over. Just fucking brilliant. Is not a fucking showman at all, but she's like, I'm smarter than all of you, so I'm just gonna like do that. But she didn't found that shit. So like when you're trying to like develop a foundation and a core message and a vision for an actual entity, I do think some level of that showmanship and that self-importance that leads you to exactly what you stated. I want to do something important. I think that's a completely different gear that is probably a not insignificant portion of Steve Jobs' success, or anybody else's, you know, the Elons of the worlds, or the Bill Gateses, or whoever. But I do think that he's drawing a very hard line, and I think it's very much a fuzzy one.
Yeah, and the more that you said that, I'm like, yeah, I feel like you might want to follow a diva. I don't know if you want to hire one. Like, now that I think, like, based on what he's saying and how that works, I think if you go, okay, that person's a diva and they're steering a ship, I might want to get on this because it's probably going somewhere interesting, versus like, I've got an established thing. I think it's probably better to hire an operator or a hyper competent technician, not a fucking showman. Like, we already know how this ship runs. Yeah.
A hyper competent technician that has developed decent communication skills. Boom.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. I think that's what, I agree. Yeah. Because a diva, so going back to I feel like a diva, okay, so, and all the comments basically disagree with him as well. A diva will they'll do exactly what Richie did. If they're not hyper competent enough to where success is correctly lined up with their sense of self-worth, and their skills are lined up with the capacity to actually make it happen, they'll actually fucking sabotage the whole shit. They'll blow shit up that doesn't make sense. They'll nix solutions that actually fix the fucking problem, but don't massage their ego. They'll make other people feel shit. And maybe even if you do succeed in getting the shit done, everybody hates the fucking company. People aren't getting paid enough. It's unhappy. And it's like, cool, success at what cost? So it's like, no, don't hire a fucking diva. I mean, maybe you can hire a diva if they've done enough work to where they know when to chill the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? Backstage, they know how to go, okay, cool, I'm doing too much. Let me, or like they have that empathy element, then cool. But generally speaking, that's not selection criteria. Because even the personality hires who are like, flowery and they bring electricity to a room, I wouldn't say that necessarily those people are even divas necessarily. A lot of them are more like caretakers, but or some mixture of the two. So yeah, big no for me on the divas in the workplace.
Yeah, huge no for me.
It's a red flag.